Hello, Happy New Year and welcome to a new episode of Acting Prime Minister, the podcast where we pick the PM and ask a different guest each week to imagine themselves behind that Downing Street door. And this week's Prime Minister is half Polish, half Pakistani, high school dropout turned highly skilled doctor. She kickboxes, she sings, but most of all she speaks on behalf of the people of Tooting. And now Rosena Allin-Khan is also running to be Deputy Leader of Labour. Rosena, welcome to Acting Prime Minister.
What an intro, I love it.
Yeah, I can hear you laughing along to the intro there. Don't know if that was a good laugh, a bad laugh.
It's a good laugh, always a good laugh. All laughing is good.
And thank you for having us here in your office, where some of the things I mentioned in that introduction are actually represented on your walls, because we've got a picture of you in your boxing gloves, we've got a poster of Tooting, Life's a Hoot in Tooting.
That's right.
We've got an I Love NHS poster. And
Yes.
so I'm getting this kind of vibe of quite an eclectic character, lots of interests.
That's right.
And quite a diverse background.
Yes, I think it's actually really fantastic because I get to represent my community in so many ways, and I have a really diverse community, and that's reflected in who I am as well, and it's marvellous.
And now you're running to be Deputy Leader of Labour. You've literally just announced your candidacy today when we're doing this interview.
I have.
So we're going to have loads to talk about in terms of that, I'm sure. But let's send you through the Downing Street door.
Okay.
You are now Prime Minister, and let's just get a few things out of the way. Let's let you settle in for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a bit of time here to set yourselves up. So what is the picture, firstly, that you would like to put behind your desk on the wall? Who do you think you'd hang on the wall? Is there someone who inspires you? Or?
Probably a picture of me and my mum.
Yeah.
Because I certainly wouldn't be a number 10 if it wasn't for her. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. And so, yeah, probably a good old photo of me and mum. And yeah. And I'd also like look around the room as well, see if it needs a little zhuzhing. I've been in number 10 a couple of times. It's a little bit stale. So
Might change the curtains, or?
I might want to zhuzh it up a little. We've all heard of Gok, right? Now we've got Rack, Rosena Allin-Khan. I can rack it up a bit. So yeah. No,
a few scatter cushions. Well, in fact, you've got a few scatter cushions in the office now.
I do, yeah.
You take those into number 10. What's the drink you'd pour yourself, do you think, while you're zhuzhing up the office?
It'd probably have to be a cup of tea with way too many sugars. The joke is that I have diabetes in a cup. I shouldn't laugh really, but I do like a super sweet tea.
Says the doctor.
Says the doctor. But, you know, everyone has to have a vice, you know, and if a few sugars in a cup of tea is mine, it could be worse. That or a bottle of the white Schlur, if I'm really pushing the boat out.
Okay, nothing too crazy then.
Nothing too crazy.
And who's the person you'd just love to phone up and say, oh, I'm in Downing Street?
Oh, my best mate, but she probably already know because I'm not a quiet one. So the moment you asked me to get there, I probably would have phoned her on the way. But I wouldn't mind calling Beyonce, see if she wants to pop down, have a little dance in there, make up a little number 10 routine.
That would be amazing.
Could be good.
Let's talk a bit about your path to power as well, because you mentioned your mother there,
Yeah.
and she brought you up on her own, didn't she? Because she was Polish, actually. I think she was in
Yeah.
the Polish girl band, wasn't
Yes,
she?
she
And
was.
then she met your dad, who was
Yeah.
from Pakistan,
Yeah,
a TV
yeah.
repairman.
Yeah.
And they divorced when you
Yes.
were a child. So what was that like growing up with your mum and experiencing that divorce at a young age?
So the upbringing was tough, and we certainly went on a journey as a family. I have a younger brother who's 5 years younger than me, and we certainly experienced our fair share of what so many people in the country understand so well, unfortunately, which is what it's like to have to really be careful of what you eat and buy in the shops. And we understood what it was like to have one heater in the house, and it was tough. But my mum worked 3 jobs to put food on the table. I had a series of part-time jobs rather young to try and help supplement the income, especially in holidays. And my mum always told us that there were people that had it worse off than us. And so really, like from a really young age, I had that feeling that if ever we got ourselves out of this situation, that I wanted to devote my life to helping others. And my mum did always talk about hope, because actually, when I look back, I can see that time was very much during a Conservative government. Mm-hmm. And she talked about the possibility of things changing and a hope for the future. And that came with a Labour government for a family like us. And things were so tough at home at one point that I, in fact, didn't show up to some of my A-levels and ended up failing them. And I went from being a straight A student for GCSEs and good at lots of things to just having no A levels and just being left.
How did that happen? And you say things were tough at home. What was it particularly you think that sent you off the rails?
Yeah, well, there were things I can't really go into the details of too much, but like many people that live in our country today, I have a real understanding of what it's like to have a life path that doesn't go the way you might plan it to. But actually, the real message is not in whether your life is a success the whole time. It's how you learn and develop from the times that you fail and what you do with those stories. And for me, I ended up being able to go to Cambridge to study medicine. And my mum helped me crowdfund to pay for the fees because I passed the exam. Then I got to the interview stage and the final interview stage, and then they sent a letter saying, welcome to the final interview. You have to show you have access to a significant amount of money because you're not allowed to have a part-time job because of Saturday lectures and things. Plus there are college fees and tuition fees as well, which I was able to get partly subsidised thanks to a Labour government, but nevertheless it was tough. So she phoned around all her friends and they all sort of donated 50 or 100 quid. She photocopied the bank statement, gave it all back, and I went to my final interview. I'm here.
Brilliant. And why was it that you wanted to become a doctor?
Originally, I think I was about 3 when I was told that my grandma was blind, and I really wanted to become a doctor to help her. But actually, I never stopped wanting to be a doctor, and it got strengthened. That desire was really strengthened through my teenage years when I realised that some of the things that we were going through, access to public services, were not the way they should be. And actually, if I was a doctor and worked in somewhere like a frontline position like A&E, I could best serve people that were going through some of the challenges that we had.
So this is already a pretty eventful life by the time you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
Then you decide you want to become an MP. You get selected as a candidate for Tooting because Sadiq Khan goes off to be Mayor of London.
Yeah.
And then just the awful events, which many of us in Westminster remember, of the day that Jo Coxs was murdered. That was the day of the by-election.
Yeah,
and so then
was.
you have this strange, I'm guessing, experience of the euphoria of being elected an MP, but at the same time, that awful experience of being in a party that's just lost another MP from a different part of the country. What was that like?
I'll be honest, I was in bits. So on the election day, the team found out before they told me. We were out canvassing. I think we'd gone to a pub to have some lunch when it had happened, and then we started a canvassing session. And then I knew something had gone wrong because I could see everyone's faces drop. And then they said, let's go back to the campaign centre. And I had my friends and family scattered all over the constituency, but I had my best mate with me, the same one that I would have phoned if you would invite me to Downing Street. And we went to the campaign office, into the back room, and they told us the news. And I was literally beside myself because like an hour before I'd been sent a photo of my 2 little girls by the person who was helping out on election day looking after them. And I heard of Jo's children and I just thought, she's only a few years older than me. She's a humanitarian aid worker just like I was. Our children don't ask us to do these jobs. Like, what am I doing? And I was quite distraught and I went out and I said to the, and I was crying, I'll be honest, and I went out and I said to the volunteers, I'm so sorry, we've had this heinous attack on a beautiful person, a real attack on our democracy, and I utterly understand if you want to stop campaigning and go home. But everybody said the only way to fight out against this is just to keep fighting. But at that point, no one knew really what happened. I thought, is this something that is going to happen to all MPs? Is it female MPs? You know, am I trying to do a job that's going to have my children at risk? I just didn't know. And then someone reminded me, Rosena, you're doing this for the very purest of reasons. You're doing this because of your life of public service, your life of humanitarian activism, where you understand that we don't value life globally the way we do in the UK. And we see in the UK that people don't have the life chances they deserve. You're doing this for the right reasons. We kept on campaigning, but then when I won, it was so bittersweet. I thought, oh my goodness, like have I replaced? I felt as though I'd replaced her, and I had to be reminded, no, you've replaced Sadiq. And I felt guilty. I felt sad. I felt depressed, and I dropped my acceptance speech, paid tribute to her, and spent 3 days crying at home to come into Parliament on the Monday, and it was just awful.
But you did obviously persevere and then establish yourself as an MP. You're now on the shadow front bench as Shadow Sports Minister. And of course now we're imagining that you are Prime Minister, so you can make some big decisions.
Yes.
One of those is going to be to put together a cabinet. And you could appoint anyone from the country, from any time in history, they can be dead or alive. Just a couple of names. Who would you love to have in your cabinet?
Oh my goodness me. I'd like to have Carol Shepherd, who was my school teacher in primary school at Trinity St Mary's in Balham.
Education Secretary, I'm assuming.
Education Secretary, she's awesome. I'm still in touch with her, and I would like to send her this podcast when it's out. I would... I'd like to have one of my best friends in it, because he fought against some real mental health issues and was very brave in coming out about it publicly at a time when it wasn't... When men didn't feel safe to talk about not feeling okay mentally.
So maybe Health Secretary for him.
Maybe Health Secretary for him.
And I think you've said to me that you'd like to create a new ministry.
I would.
What is this new ministry?
It's the Ministry of Fabulosity.
And
it's a real thing. Listen now, no naysaying or giggling. It's a real ministry. It will have to be dominated by fabulous MPs and come out with fabulous policies to shape the country. But some very serious ones, but some lighter, more entertaining ones about how we see ourselves and some of the things that we can do as a nation to just put a bit of swing in our step.
So what might these policies be? Have you got one in mind, or...?
Oh, right, well, if you're pressing me, okay, if I must. So I think political debate, there is room for traditional political debate, and then sometimes there's room for a dance-off.
Okay.
Because sometimes you need to know how your political representatives can represent themselves in real life, right? We all have a boogie. Wouldn't you want to know?
You'd have a dance-off on the floor of the House of Commons then? It's kind of...
Well, maybe not that. Maybe that's pushing it a little bit. But say, for example, in a general election, say, you're putting yourself forward against the other candidates and, you're answering the difficult questions, and then all of a sudden someone whacks on a tune and you just got a bit of body popping. You can choose, if you're a little shy, you can, rather than do an actual dance-off, you can do a little solo and have that be judged separately. There's many ways to do this, but a dance-off, there's definitely a place for a dance-off in this world. I don't care what anyone says.
I'm trying to imagine what Boris Johnson's best move might be now.
See, now he probably doesn't have a good move. See, now that would get exposed. That would get exposed in a dance-off. You need to know these things.
We obviously have seen Theresa May's moves, so
we
need to go back over those, do we? What would be, aside from the Ministry of Fabulosity, what are the things that you kind of really care about? What would be the first serious policy you'd want to introduce, do you think?
When I've thought about this and what I would like to do with my job actually over the next couple of years, in Number 10 or out of Number 10, it's really, there is a focus on our broken social care system. I see in the hospital when I work in A&E just how vulnerable families can't cope. I've also seen, unfortunately, at the sharp end as a family member, what it's like when you find your loved one bruised, beaten in a care home and you can't get answers.
Because your father was in a very difficult position, wasn't he? Just remind us again what the situation was there.
We got a hushed phone call from a carer in the place that he was in, and we were told that something terrible had happened, and we came to find that he had been bloodied and bruised, and no one had called us and told us, and we then found him also unconscious on another occasion on the floor, blood everywhere, and nobody giving us any answers. But in coming out and speaking out about that, I realised this is a problem that has been faced by so many families, and I feel that when I look at our elderly community and I look at how they fought for us to have the liberty that we enjoy today, we don't value them the way that we should, because if something happened to a young child who was vulnerable and physically infirm in the same way that an elderly person is, particularly if they have dementia, and they were found with bruises or there was any sign of anything untoward happening, we'd be in uproar about it, but yet our elderly aren't protected. So I would look at passing legislation, and I've thought about some about what that would look like, but I would look at passing legislation to protect our fantastic but vulnerable elderly community.
And social care, of course, is going to be a huge debate in the coming years, because we know the government will look seriously at some reform in this area, probably on a cross-party basis. So that's going to be an interesting one to follow. I suppose looking at other policies, and we're going to end up getting a little bit into the Labour leadership here, because you are running to be deputy leader, and so I think it's natural that we want to talk about that too. Would your premiership, do you think, as Prime Minister or as deputy Labour leader, whatever you want, would you be as radical as Labour's last manifesto in the December election, do you think?
We need a period of reflection where we really do go back to our voters and our campaigners and really listen. There was a lot in the manifesto that was good. And when you look at the number of young people that signed up to vote, that was really encouraging. There was clearly hope in there for a great number of people, but the way the messages were delivered just didn't cut through. And I think now, as a doctor in A&E, if someone comes to me with a problem, I examine the symptoms, I take a thorough history, and look at what the problem is before I diagnose the solution. That's what we have to do as a Labour Party. We really have to dig deep. And as the Premier or as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, I would make it my mission to go into Scotland, Wales, the north of England, the West Country, to ask at a grassroots community level, what will it take to get the vote you lent to the Tories back to us? What can we do for you? We can't put words in people's mouths. We can't assume what they want, because the Labour Party didn't get that right in the last election. So I think we have to look at where we need to learn from our mistakes, because we've lost 4 elections. But also we do have to identify that we have some incredible leadership around the country. We've got councillors, we have got activists. That's right. We are the most incredible grassroots movement in Europe, I believe.
There are candidates, particularly in the leadership race, I'm thinking of Rebecca Long-Bailey, who argue that actually the manifesto was perfect, it was great, Jeremy Corbyn's leadership was good. She has said there are things that she'd do differently, but do you think there's almost a sort of state of denial among some of the candidates about the level of change that needs to go on here?
I think the reason we lost the last election is down to many things. One of them being the leadership, another being our Brexit position. I don't believe it was our position at the end per se, it was how long it took to get there. And also the fact that people didn't believe that our manifesto was credible or deliverable. And each of these in and of themselves need to be looked at in depth. But I've been travelling up and down the country, and I have been talking to activists in Leave seats where we lost MPs and asking them what happened. And they said for every door they knocked on that Brexit came up as an issue, there were many doors where the leadership came up as an issue. And I think it would be reckless not to listen to that and to learn from our mistakes with humility and move forward in a non-tribal way. Now's time for unity, because I tell you what, the child that has to go to the food bank, the woman that has to wait so long for her cancer chemotherapy treatment that her cancer spread, the man that has a job that's on a 0 hours contract and he can't feed his family, they care about Labour values. They don't care about what box that's in. They need a Labour government, and we can only deliver that by learning from the last 4 elections and being gracious in our approach, but rolling up our sleeves and listening.
So what do you think when you hear a candidate like Rebecca Long-Bailey saying that she not only believes in the Labour policies, but she helped write those policies and she's going to stick rigidly to those policies and take them forward?
Look, there are good policies in there, and there were people that believed in them enough to sign up to vote in their droves. But it would be irresponsible of anyone not to reflect on where we need to rebuild trust, where we need to accept that we weren't seen as credible enough to govern. And sometimes with great leadership, there has to come strength, and strength can come in admitting that you didn't get it all right. And that's really important. That's essential in order to move forward.
You mentioned Brexit as well, and you campaigned very strongly to remain. I think your slogan was "Vote Rosena, vote Remain."
In Tooting, that's right. I had to do what I had to do.
In Tooting.
Yeah.
Do you regret that at all? Because some are blaming actually your wing of the party, or those of you in the party who campaigned for Remain, for messing up the Brexit strategy and putting off a load of voters in the north of England.
I'm not in any wing. I have Labour values, the Labour values that drove me to want to become a doctor, and I want a Labour government. My constituency voted to Remain overwhelmingly, and I always polled my community before I took decisions, as many MPs spoke to their constituents around the country. But the reason I wanted a people's vote was because we had a deal that, by admission of the ex-Chancellor, was bad for our economy. The ex-Prime Minister admitted it was bad for us. I was saying, let's put it back to the people, because I knew it was going to harm not just my community, but the country. And so, of course, I was going to come out and speak out for what I believed to be right. But the Labour Party's equivocation on one of the biggest issues of our time is what was damaging. Because if they had come out just one way or the other, at least people would have known the direction that they were moving in. Nobody benefited from either side. But look, ultimately, in a position of leadership, I respect the fact that we are leaving at the end of this month, but then the job will change. The job will be holding Boris Johnson and his right-wing government, holding their feet to the fire and making sure that we protect our NHS from being sold off, that we protect workers' rights. I mean, as a junior doctor, I remember we had to work 120 hours a week. People's mental health was terrible. And the European Working Time Directive is what started to make young doctors feel as though they could be sane again. There is so much that we need to protect, and that's going to be the new job going forward.
And the question that sort of begs is, would you campaign to rejoin the EU? Because there are some talking about maybe in a few years' time Labour could run a campaign saying actually it was a mistake to leave the EU, we want to rejoin it.
The first thing we need to do is listen to our voters. We need to regain trust. We need to do this in Scotland. I mean, we were losing since 2015 in Scotland. We need to go back into these communities. We can't put words in people's mouths. We need to ask ourselves. We need to roll up our sleeves, get in there and do the hard graft. That's what it's going to take. And I will support whoever the leader is. I'm determined to support the vision that they have going forward, but also apply respectful pressure where it's necessary. And I don't know who the leader is going to be. I don't know what vision they're going to have for what we do with Europe. I don't know what our voters are going to say they want from us. I don't know what our activists are going to say they want. I think at this point, it's way too early to tell. What we need to concentrate is on the job at hand, which is that we have potentially a hard Brexit in a few weeks' time. And we have to ensure that we protect our communities.
So would it be fair to say you're not ruling out rejoining the EU in the future? It's just you want to spend a bit of time understanding what the voters want?
At this point, I'm accepting we're leaving, and I'm going to make sure I stand up for our communities against this government.
Okay, let's talk about some more fun things now.
Okay.
We've got to talk about your home life as Prime Minister.
Woohoo!
I think I already know some of the answers to these because my research has thrown up all kinds of hobbies. But what would you do to relax as Prime Minister, do you think?
So I do like to box.
Yeah.
But I don't know how easy it'd be to go boxing as a Prime Minister. Would you just have to
You'd probably have a private gym or something, wouldn't you, that you could go and use?
So
I mean, Theresa May used to do
boring.
something a little bit like CrossFit in her spare time, no jokes.
Really?
Yeah, she used to go to a gym and I guess they cleared the gym floor and then she had a personal trainer who did a bit of CrossFit with her.
Half the fun is the chit chat you get. I like dance classes. I love dance classes. I like shaking what my mama gave me. I do like singing. I've been in lots of bands. I'm not going to sing.
No, I heard you can sing really well. I think you should sing.
Yeah.
What's your favourite song?
Oh, I have a lot. I'm not going to sing on your podcast.
Can we not persuade you just to sing one bar for us?
Okay. This girl is on fire.
I mean, that is blooming good, Rosena.
Thanks.
What is it? Is there anything you're really rubbish at?
Cooking.
Okay, right.
Can't sew.
That makes me feel a little bit better.
Can't sew. I'm quite messy. That's the truth.
Okay, so you're not one for a tidy home.
Well, listen, I love the thought of it, right? No, listen, I am. I'm all like about, racking it up, giving it a bit of zhuzh, having it nice and tidy.
Scatter cushions.
Yeah. But when it comes to doing it, when you have the busy days, you're living your best life, you come home and it's like midnight and you go get to bed and you haven't got long, just the thought of putting it all away, you just kind of think, maybe I'll just do it in the morning, and then the morning never really comes because it gets busy again.
Well, look, maybe
you can relate, I know you can.
I definitely can relate, especially the past year or so where I've come home at midnight every night and just, barely been able to get myself to bed, never mind tidy up the clothes that I've dropped on the floor around me. Let's just do a quick fire round to finish off now.
It's exciting.
Who's your most famous friend?
You!
No. Blair or Brown?
No, neither.
Neither?
No, I don't.
Who would you say that you wanted to kind of emulate as Labour deputy leader, but which leaders do you think have been really good?
I think we haven't had many Labour governments for a long time. I think that there are honestly lessons to be learned from the different leaders. Different leaders got things right and got things wrong. I certainly personally benefited from policies from the Blair government because that made it possible for me to go to medical school. But I wasn't a fan of going to war. I didn't want to go to war in Iraq. So that's a complex one. And yeah.
Okay, this is going to be even harder then. Poland or Pakistan?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're both incredible cultures. I consider myself really lucky. I mean, it's.
Is there one that you identify? I assume you identify as British.
Oh
first,
yeah, I'm British.
And then
British through and through.
Pakistani is kind of secondary identities, but is there one that you kind of feel more of affinity to?
I think being British, right? I mean, what does that even mean? We're all British. I'm proudly British. When I go around the world and someone says, "Where are you from?" You're British.
Yeah.
But you can have roots that are from all over the place.
Yeah.
We have people who are British who have Irish heritage, who have heritage from all over the world. But I am very proud of my roots as well. And I spent a lot of time going to Poland as a child, and my Polish is terrible now, but it used to be pretty good. But I have just been to Pakistan and reunited with my long lost family that I never thought I'd meet. And I love the clothes and the food. And I like the Polish food. I mean, when I was pregnant, I thought I was going to turn into a pierogi. That's all I wanted to eat. So I think that being British is about valuing every part of the rich tapestry that is our society. But I like my fish and chips. I love my cup of tea. I love my British passport. I know I don't want another one. Everyone said to me, "Would you get a Polish passport?" Now I live in I'm proudly British, and but that doesn't mean I can't really value and own my cultural heritage. It's a wonderful thing.
And do you speak Polish?
Yeah, it's not fantastic.
Okay.
It's a bit sort of stuck at basic conversational. I'm at the disco at 15. Would you like to dance with me? I couldn't.
Which seems to be your stock question to most people.
Have you spotted a link here? Yeah, there's a theme, isn't there? I'm just a mover. I think I came out the womb moving. Seriously.
What would your Downing Street pet be?
Oh.
Do you like animals?
I love animals. I'm a dog person over cats.
Okay.
So I would love a little dog, probably a little pug, because they've just got personality.
Yeah.
But I'm just not that great, in case you've noticed, they're not great at cooking, a little bit messy, not so great at taking care of myself. I do worry about looking after animals, but no, okay. I love animals. I'm a cuddly, wuddly kind of woman.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Lastly, I ask everyone on the podcast this, would you ever want to be Prime Minister, do you think?
Gosh.
You obviously want to progress in your career and you want to be Deputy Labour leader, but can you imagine yourself going all the way? Would you want to do it? Well, some people say no, they don't want to do it. Some people say yeah, they do, but is it something you desire?
No, it isn't. Because in all seriousness, what I desire more than anything, and I can say this because when you've grown up understanding what it's like to feel like you have no hope and to be told that a girl like you won't ever amount to anything because of who you are and where you come from, gives you a fire in your belly to fight out against that and to fight for others. And Labour values of fairness, equality, social justice, these are all the founding tenets of who I am as a person and what I believe is right for our country. And so for me, the deputy leader role is the role that I want. I don't want to be a leader in waiting. I want that role because I want to be the voice for the grassroots of our movement to help rebuild it again so that we don't close the door on a whole generation of kids who are just like me. And yeah, I don't feel that as leader, I would be able to do quite the same thing. I'd be so busy trying to run the country, whereas I feel that there's a job to be done at the grassroots and I'm the woman for it.
Okay, beautifully segued there. A bit of a leadership pitch, deputy leadership pitch, mixed in with everything else. And it has been a very eclectic conversation. I've got an eclectic conversation, I must say. But really fun too. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's really great to have you in the office.
And I'm sure we'll speak to you again soon during the campaign.
Thank you. Thanks a million.